On this exciting episode of Victoire, we have the pleasure of sitting down with one of WWE's most memorable characters of the early 2000s. He is a man with a passion for professional wrestling and an uncanny knack for entertaining. He is Eugene Nick Dinsmore. Victoire. Sponsored by Desert Golfing Digest. Golf information and travel guide of the Coachella Valley. 760-399-6517. Now, on with the show. Welcome back to another episode of Victoire. I am joined today by my distinguished guest, Mr. Nick Eugene Dinsmore. Welcome, Eugene, or Nick, as we go by today. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing fantastic. You can call me Eugene. You can call me Nick. You can call me whatever you want. Former WWE superstar. The best part about being a WWE superstar is you get an action figure. The best part about having your own action figure is you get to play with yourself in public.
Nice one,
Thank
brother.
you for having me.
Absolutely. And I did do a little intro for you. And I said, well, that was one of the things that made you so popular is you are such the natural entertainer. You really are. I was watching back, the WrestleMania 21 Road to Hollywood thing that you did, the Forrest Gump. Do you remember that?
I think I remember that. I
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah, very good stuff. Very good stuff. So that's where I wanted to really start with you today, Nick, is the beginning. Obviously, you have an extreme passion for pro wrestling. So can you tell us what your childhood was like to begin with?
So I grew up in central Indiana.
Okay.
And at the time, we lived out in the country. And this was before cable television was everywhere. We didn't have cable TV. So I only got WWF.
Yeah.
And when I was about 8 years old, I saw my first Saturday night's main event.
Mhm.
Hulk Hogan wrestled Nikolai Volkov. Uncle Elmer got married. Roddy Piper got the bejesus beat out of him by Paul Mr. Wonderful Orndorff, and I was hooked. At 8 years old, I told my mom, that's what I want to do. I want to be a pro wrestler.
Yeah.
And luckily, as things progressed, I moved to the Louisville, Kentucky area, and I got to see the Memphis-based USWA wrestling.
Okay.
And lo and behold, there was a wrestling school in the town I lived in, which was the Nightmare Danny Davis School of Professional Wrestling, which became Ohio Valley Wrestling.
Yeah.
And that's how I got my initial start in pro wrestling. But I was a lifelong fan ever since I was a kid. Had the action figures, bought all the magazines. We didn't get the pay-per-views, but we didn't have cable. But I watched as much WWF as I could see.
Yeah. So this was all through high school. So when you were at high school, you were telling your teachers, I'm going to be a pro wrestler. That's it. Wow. Okay.
So when I was a senior, I was in the homecoming court. I didn't win homecoming king. I still say I was cheated, but regardless, as they're introducing me, Nick Dinsmore wants to be a WWF wrestler one day. And that's when a girl came up to me in the hallway and said, my dad's got a wrestling school right here. And that was Danny Davis's daughter, April.
Wow.
And I didn't know anything about it. And I went the next weekend and saw it. And I was like, I'm in, signed the contract. And I was off and running.
So you were off and running at a young age. Were you working at the time to support yourself, or how was that? How was it working out?
Yeah, I started training, I think, when I was 19. I played one all-star football game after my high school, but it was a small one in the Louisville area. And then I started wrestling when I was 19. But then I was also, for a while, I did some woodworking shop where I was making kitchen cabinets, which was miserable. Wasn't miserable, but it wasn't wrestling. And then
Yeah.
for a while, I was also a substitute teacher at the high school that I went to.
Oh, wow.
Because it was a private Catholic school, and you didn't necessarily have to have a teaching degree, but you had to have 2 years of college, which I had. I got a degree from Indiana. Okay. And I actually ran a show at the high school while I was a teacher. So every day in class, I was selling tickets. We sold a ticket to every kid in the school. 500 kids showed up.
Yeah.
And it was one of the coolest events, really. But yeah. I mean, that was me the whole time. I'm going to be a wrestler. Everybody knew it.
Yeah, and you've definitely got away with kids too, because you mentioned kids there. Now that obviously it came out in your career, the kids absolutely adored you. I think you were, to me it was kind of like, Hacksaw, Jim Duggan. He would get a lot of, a lot of respect and a lot of love from the kids. So you kind of went down that same route. Wow. So that was an early start for you. That was an early start, but interesting that you were in the school system. So how do you think the school system, working as a substitute teacher, how do you think that maybe helped you connect with the younger audience when you were in WWE?
I don't know if that did, because I was teaching high school kids, and a substitute teacher, I'd put the lesson, do this on the board. But realistically, what would happen was we'd turn on the TV onto MTV, and everybody would play euchre, play cards. And it was, but I had a relationship where they knew I was a substitute teacher, but I was almost like a friend because I really wasn't a teacher. I wasn't gonna, wasn't gonna stooge them off for doing anything wrong or whatever they did. I really didn't care as long as they didn't make a whole lot of noise.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, it was really when I first started wrestling. Nightmare Danny Davis was my coach. He's the one who taught me at training. Do this, watch the videos. But then when I started wrestling the Hustler Rip Rogers, I wrestled him at least once a week, sometimes twice a week for about 3 years. And he's the one who taught me how to perform in the ring, how to be able to listen to the crowd and go out there and just, the puppeteer and puppet that crowd. And he's the really, the one that I attribute, learning how to work in the ring.
Yeah.
And it was just something that, some people don't have it, but it's something that came easy to me.
Came natural to you. Yeah, definitely it came across on screen. Do you still keep in contact with some of the guys that you started out with training?
I still talk to Danny. I'm living now in Florida. I'm on my Florida beach home here, but Danny lives, about 12 miles up the road. I still text Rip Rogers every now and then. I talk to Rob Conway, Danny Basham, Doug Basham. That was my crew of guys that came from the Louisville, Kentucky area that made it to WWE. So yeah, I keep in contact with them.
Yeah. So I've got to ask you, Eugene. I mean, I see the yellow and the red T-shirt. Was the Hulk your favorite growing up?
Probably starting out. I mean, I liked all of them, and I really liked the British Bulldogs. But Hulk, I mean, Hulk was the guy. He was the guy they were pushing. Yeah. And then when he got beat by Andre on the main event when he lost the title, I remember punching the wall as hard as I could. I think I broke my hand, didn't break it, but hurt it. And it was like really like one of the only times like I never like knowing wrestling now. Nothing they did ever got heat with me. Like I just liked the wrestling until Hogan got cheated. Then I was pissed. I was angry about that.
Yeah.
I had to find out what was going to happen. And it was great storytelling. And I loved that I got to watch it at that time period because it was fun.
It was a lot of fun that time period. Was that the event when the $1 Million Man was trying to buy the belt from Andre? Yeah.
Yeah. And they had two referees. They had the two Earl and Dave Hebner were twins.
Yeah. 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 I remember that. That was
I wonder how long they sat on that, having two twin referees before eventually they were going to pull that. That had to be like in the works and waiting for the right moment. And that was definitely it.
Oh yeah, for sure. That was definitely, I mean, I think, arguably the storytelling back then, I mean, even in your era, in the Ruthless Aggression era, the storytelling was genius back in those days. I think it was the long form because they really took you into the feud, or as it would call, what did they call them? Not the feud. I've heard it said before. The program they used to call it. They would really drag it. It'd be 6 months or a year that these two would feud. What are your feelings on that? Because obviously wrestling's changed now. Do you prefer the old school way of doing it, or are you enjoying this new approach where it's quicker, faster, stronger?
I don't necessarily follow the product today, like watching it all the time. Of course, I follow it on social media, so I get to see all the headlines and see all the guys. But without a doubt, the old school storytelling, the slow build and let it build. Hogan against Macho Man was a year in the making, and that was awesome. Yeah. I was fortunate because Brian Gerwick wrote all of Eugene's stuff, and Brian Gerwick was the one that wrote, I think, all the Rock stuff. Oh, and he could write for Eugene. I tell guys now, you could have a great character, you could be a great wrestler, but if you don't have a writer that can write for you, you're not going to make it. But luckily, Brian wrote a lot of good stuff for Eugene. I think he's got a new book out now. He also wrote a movie for Eugene.
Okay, wow.
Do you remember Big Show's movie Knucklehead?
I don't believe I've seen that one, but
I think it might have been straight to DVD, but that was the script that was initially meant for Eugene, but I got released, and Brian I think still wanted to produce it, so they put Big Show in it.
Oh, okay. Interesting story. We'll have to check that one out. I'd like to see what could have been, but I was going to say you're a natural entertainer as well. So even today it's coming off the screen. So, any natural inclination for that during your younger years in drama at high school and things like that? Were you a performer? Were you an entertainer?
I mean, I think you could say like I didn't do any acting, but I mean, I was one of the class clowns. Me and my buddy were the class clowns.
Yeah.
And then I remember, playing football when I could never catch the ball. I was a defensive lineman, but I intercepted a middle screen one time, and of course I had to high step all the way into the end zone just because like Deion Sanders did that.
Yeah.
Whenever I would wrestle amateur wrestling, I mean, sometimes I would look up at the crowd and if I was winning and make faces. So yeah, it's just been something that has just been part of my personality. It's not something I learned or perfected. It just kind of came out.
It's just a God-given talent. Yeah, absolutely. So you're 19 years old. You're starting your training with Danny Davis. So what happens during that period right there in OVW until the time that you are brought up, you're called up to WWE? So how many years is that you're with OVW?
So I started training in May of '96,
Okay.
and I wrestled. My first match I think was September 1st of '96. I wrestled the handsome one, Jason Lee, another OVW guy, good guy. And then I started wrestling Rip, and then eventually, I remember it was April 1st, 1997. USWA was at the Louisville Gardens, and they called Danny's school, which was 5 miles away. Somebody didn't show up. We need somebody. Nick, go.
Yeah.
Well, I'd ridden my bicycle to training, so I had to pedal my ass back to my house quickly, get my stuff, get my car, and drive over to the Gardens. I'm running in there. The first match was in the ring. I'm sweating, and they go, April Fools, and my heart just sank. And then they go, no, we're just kidding. We're just kidding. Get dressed. So I was on the second match, and I wrestled, I don't know if you remember Mantar.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Yeah, he was, do you remember the South African Truth Commission?
The Truth Commission, was that with Don Callis?
I believe he was in it later, but Mantar was initially in it with a mask, and he was Tank. That's who I wrestled in the Gardens, and he was 450 pounds, but he took care of me, and I mean, it was a good match. And after that, I slowly started wrestling for USWA throughout '97 until they closed. I wrestled the Brian Pillman Memorial Show, I believe, in early '98, where I met Terry Taylor. Then I started getting called into WCW. I did 2 Nitros, 3 Thunders, a handful of Saturday nights. And then I didn't realize that Terry Taylor got released from WCW, but he got hired by WWE. So in December of '99, he hired me to a developmental contract with WWE.
Oh, wow.
So from '99 until 2004, I was in OVW doing the training. I was participating in the training, but because I had a little bit of experience, I was also helping coach some of the guys like John Cena and Brock Lesnar and Batista and Randy Orton and Victoria and Shelton Benjamin. That whole big first crew that came together. They talk about that rookie class or whatever, however they talk about it, and it was good. I was helping train those guys. I was wrestling those guys on TV. Yeah. At that point, Cornette had come into the picture, and he was writing all the stuff for us. The matchmaker, the creative direction, and pardon me. Lucky for me, he another thing, he could write for Nick Dinsmore, and he put me at the top, either the top babyface, the top heel, the top tag team. I was in something. Mm-hmm. Myself, Rob Conway, Doug Basham, Danny Basham, we had a little bit more experience, and Cornette kind of filtered all the WWE developmentals through us to get them experience to send them up to TV.
Yeah.
So I think Rob Conway made it to TV first, then the Bashams went, and everybody kept asking, from hired in '99 until 2004, you've been here a long time. Nobody's been here 5 years. I didn't know if I'd ever make it to TV, but I was happy living in my hometown, being a star on my hometown TV, sleeping in my own bed every night. The shows were only 2 hours away at the most.
Yeah.
But I saw a lot of the WWE guys, they would complain and they would get called up to the main roster. The squeaky wheel gets the oil.
Yeah.
So I told my friend Doug Basham, I said, Doug, I think I'm going to quit and try to go to Japan. Mm-hmm. I had no intention of quitting. I didn't know anybody in Japan. I wouldn't have the first clue how to get there. Yeah. But Doug told Dean Malenko. Dean tells Johnny Ace. Next thing I know, I'm in a meeting with Vince McMahon, February of 2004. Okay. Now, I'll rewind just a little bit. Late 2003, Rip Rogers was the coach of the WWE developmental class, and he's always trying to give us ideas for characters. And Rip's son, intelligent, smart guy, genius, but he has autism. Okay. I think he's either in college or just graduated college now. I mean, phenomenal kid. So Rip gave me the idea, what about a wrestler that, might not be able to tie his shoes, might not be able to put the square peg in the square hole, but the minute he sees wrestling, he can do it all flawlessly. Yeah. Because Mr. Wrestling Nick Dinsmore was the guy that could, wrestle an hour, not break a sweat, and not use the same hold twice. So I had the wrestling down, but I just needed that little over-the-top type WWE character. So I followed that idea in the back of my head. A couple months later, the agents came down, guys like Arn Anderson, Fit Finley, and Dean Malenko, and I believe it was Arn. I pitched the idea, what about this character? And he goes, wrestling is more reality-based now. We don't do that kind of gimmicky stuff anymore. Okay, so file it in the back of my head. A little bit later, the writers came down a couple months later, and the writers rarely came down. Yeah. I pitched it to the writers. They said, Vince would never do anything like that. Okay, so I filed it in the back of my head. Yeah. Come to February 2004, meeting with Vince. He goes, I want to get back to character-based wrestling. So I just spit out that idea for a character, and he's mulling it over. He's thinking about the Rain Man of wrestling. Yeah. At that point, Steve Austin walked in the office. They were doing a Saturday night's main event taping, and Austin was on. And Vince goes, Steve, you ever seen this guy wrestle? And he looked at me, he goes, no, I don't think so. I said, well, Nightmare Danny Davis trained me because I knew Danny and Steve Austin had become friends in Dallas. And
Yeah.
Austin goes, well, you're probably one of the best. And it was like that vote of confidence. Vince goes, great, we'll start on Monday.
Wow.
We didn't actually start the following Monday, but it was about 2 months later. I debuted in late April or May.
Yeah, and it definitely was a character that worked because they took you. I mean, weren't you billed as Eric Bischoff's nephew, or was it his son
Yep.
or his nephew? Nephew.
Nephew, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, being Bischoff's nephew gave me like instant credibility,
yeah,
especially because him being the general manager, he was on several segments of the show.
yeah,
And then they paired me with William Regal, who was coming back, and he's, the consummate veteran, but he was so good. If it wasn't for Regal, I don't know if Eugene would have gotten over as well as he did, because the ability for Regal to help me and play off me and let him kind of lead the scene or the match and let me just do the little bits of comedy here and there and let the people get up. I
yeah,
mean, again, it was well written for.
yeah,
And the reason I think I performed so well is because I had 8 years of experience. I tell people I'm a 10-year overnight success.
yeah, yeah.
But I had that much experience because I saw a lot of guys get called up having less experience, and then they would just wash out because they didn't know what to do.
Right.
But I'd been the performer at OVW, been able to hear the crowd,
Mhm.
and it just again came second natural because I've been doing it for 8 years by that point.
Yeah, and that was another thing, you brought up that valid point. So many times we see, people get shot to the moon very, very quickly, or the media portrays that you're an overnight success. And that's one of the things I like to do on my show is really dig in deep to you guys and just say, hey, it wasn't all, peachy. It wasn't all rainbows and sunshine. For
Yeah.
many years, there was little or no money. There was, struggle. There was doubt, all these things. So tell us about that 8-year stretch. I mean, obviously, you said you were content where you were, but was there still that part of you? It was like, okay, well, I really do. I hope it happens. Was that waning at any time when you were thinking maybe it's not going to happen for me?
Well, so from 96 to 99, I think I was still living at home with my mom, but I was going to college at the time and wrestling. And just that was like, the years I look back because there was less pressure and WWE really wasn't in the picture. But then when WWE partnered with OVW, then everybody just kind of wanted to get a contract. You're not really thinking so far, or at least I wasn't so far as getting on TV. It's just getting a contract.
Yeah.
Then I received a contract, but I was making probably a fifth or less of what all the other guys were making, all the WWE stars that they brought in. So I assumed that maybe Cornette and Danny, said I needed a job, and so I got a little bit of money, and I was probably going to be a assistant coach or tackling dummy for the WWE guys and not really make it to TV. But again, it was just that repetitive, and I kept getting better and kept learning more and just kept, crafting the craft that eventually, whenever they gave me a chance, I had the experience to succeed. And then they gave me a little more and I succeed, and gave me a little more and I succeed. But, the first couple of years, I mean, I was making zero money. I think I was still paying Danny Davis to be trained, but loving it,
Yeah. Yeah. And then obviously, did you do independent shows outside of the school? Were there any other groups there that put on shows?
There were a few, like in Indiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee, but at the time, of course, there was no social media, no email, so it was a little bit harder to search out different, unless you knew somebody that was there.
Yeah.
Like we went down, I remember we wrestled in Central City, Kentucky, which is a real small town. And we wrestled down there, and I thought this was the biggest place in the world, but it was like a bathtub with aluminum foil and one light above the ring. And it was so dark and dirty. But that was like the first place I wrestled outside of OVW. I'm like, oh my God, I've made it.
Yeah. Now I know wrestling. You talk about wrestling. It was hard back then. I grew up in the UK, and all we had was hammerlock wrestling, and that was I went there a couple of times, Nick. There was no ring, mats on the floor. It was about a 2-hour train ride from where I lived. I was 17 at the time. This must have been like 98 or somewhere around there. But like you're right, it was so different back then. You didn't just send an email. Even what we're doing right now, this would have been unheard of 20 something years ago. I would have had to have leapt through agents, managers, what have you, corporate. The world has seriously changed now. So do you think it's become, I don't like to use the word easier, but smoother now for guys to get into a training and then get exposure and get on to a company where they're earning money? Do you think it's smoother now?
I think it might be more accessible to find places to wrestle or train. But if you're wanting to make money, I mean, I guess AEW and TNA, you might be able to. Overseas, you might be able to. But WWE is the place where you're going to make money.
Yeah.
And to get in there, I mean, I don't know if I could have done the stuff that they do at the Performance Center. I mean, those guys are phenomenal athletes, and they work their tails off. I
Yeah.
felt like we were just screwing off and having fun, just playing wrestlers until we finally got it.
Yeah.
But those guys work hard now, so I think it might be easier to find the front door, but
Yeah.
maybe a little bit harder to get through it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Yeah, I've seen it. Obviously, we've seen the documentaries and things like that. Yeah, the Performance Center now, it's very different, vastly different. But yeah, again, I still go to the point where look what was produced when you guys were training. You guys are, I mean, like I said, some of these guys that are coming out today, I'm not sure they're going to be as memorable in 20 years from now as you guys were. But I wanted to touch on something because you brought up WCW. So obviously now, you're what? So what would happen? Hogan and Andre would have happened in '88 when he took the belt. By '98, a decade later, you're in WCW. Hogan's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
NWO's
yeah.
there. What was that like for a young Nick Dinsmore?
So I didn't know anybody, so I would just sit in the hallway. I had my mouth shut, my ears open, shaking hands, introducing myself. But it was intimidating. But there was definitely two different locker rooms. There was the top guy locker room, and then all the underneath guy locker room. Because I remember one day I came in and I opened the door, and all the NWO guys and all Luger and all them turned and looked at me, and I just turned right around and walked the fuck back out. Excuse me. And then I walked into the underneath guys locker room, and that's where like all the guys were. But it was weird. You wouldn't have known this, but like a WCW Saturday night taping would tape during the week, and there might be 30 to 35 guys on the show.
Okay.
WCW would fly in 100 to 150 guys, pay for the rental car, and then when they get to the building, if they're not being used, they just leave.
Wow.
I mean, I feel like they were wasting money like crazy. But I
Yeah.
remember seeing all these people, and then by the time the show started, it was just a handful of guys.
Yeah. Well, I've heard about that. I did an interview with Buff Bagwell because we were
Yeah,
doing comparisons, but they had contracts already in the
yeah.
90s. Ted Turner already had that established. So presumably when you were there, it was were you doing a pay per basis, or did they put you under a little pay per basis?
Yeah, I was getting nightly pay, but they were also paying for my rental car, which was awesome because I wasn't even 25 then, so I don't know if I could have rented a car or had to pay some exorbitant fee to rent a car.
Hmm. So what were the differences? Obviously, you mentioned the locker room. What were the differences that you felt once you got into WWE and what you saw in WCW backstage? What were the differences, the major ones?
Well, by the time I made it to the WWE locker room, I had already trained 3/4 of the locker room in OVW, so I knew everybody, so I felt comfortable.
Okay.
But one thing I remember, like in WWE Monday Night Raw, they'll have the list of matches up at the latest like 2 o'clock.
Okay.
We did a Nitro one time when Nitro started at 8. 7:59 rolls around and they still hadn't put the board up.
Hard.
And literally they threw I think 6 luchadors out there just to give them 10 minutes to make up the card. And then I remember it was in Boston at the Fleet Center. Was it in Boston? I think maybe I might be wrong, but Lenny Lane comes up to me and Lenny goes, "We're wrestling tonight." I'm like, "Oh, cool. You and I are wrestling?" He goes, No. We're wrestling a handicap match against Scott Steiner." And
Oh,
then Steiner comes around and I'd shaken his hand, but I didn't know him. I know him a little bit better now, but I don't know if that was just him or if he was trying to intimidate me. He's like, "I'm going to give you the rails. I'm going to give you the stairs. I'm going to give you a power bomb on top of Lenny." And I said, "Sure, whatever you want. Thank you."
yeah,
And
yeah.
if you ever watched that match, he put both of us in the Steiner recliner. I was on top, Lenny was on the bottom, but he got Lenny right into the throat. So Lenny's selling, and then he choked him out on TV, and his face just goes blank.
Oh
And
my.
then they let him go. He came back, and he didn't tell me till later. He goes, "Yeah, I was out." Choked him right out, just right under his throat. I don't think he meant to. It's
Yeah,
just he had to get both of us.
yeah. What was it like? I mean, obviously Scott, 98, 99, he was humongous.
Yes.
Was he stiff or was he a nice, did he work with you guys?
I don't really remember, and I was still inexperienced, so I might not have known if he was a little stiff, but nothing. He didn't injure me,
Yeah.
Like in wrestling, some guys might be a little bit rougher than others, but if you get somebody in a safe spot, get them a good safe spot, it's not as bad as get them in the eye, or the chin, or the below the belt or something.
Yeah. Now, psychologically, because this is another great part to delve into. So psychologically, when this happens, 98, you're going to WCW. You're still a young man, you know, you're in your hometown. What was it like? Were you able to contain your nerves? Were you overly excited? You knew you were going to be in WCW. Can you recall what you were going through, those emotions?
It was just kind of surreal because it's like I started on this path and just things kept happening. I never knew when I was going to get the next booking. So I got a couple, and then it might be a couple weeks and I get another one. But the cool part was coming back to OVW, to the OVW fans who watched me on WCW. Then all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, this guy's a little bit above everybody else because nobody else has really done anything on TV.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel like I contained myself. Hopefully I didn't come off cocky or anything like that. I feel like I've been confident, but I try not to be cocky, and just, I was having a good time. I think that's one of the reasons that I got over in Louisville, because I would go out before the show at intermission, sell pictures, shake everybody's hand, talk to them. I got to know all the fans, and they knew me. So they were emotionally invested in me because they knew who I was.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the character that maybe you had in mind? Had Eugene not happened, what would you have? Were there anything that you were playing around with as a teenager? Any characters that you would have loved to portray?
Like growing up, I really didn't have an idea. I just knew I wanted to try it. And then when I started wrestling, I was just Nick Dinsmore. And then when Cornette came in, he gave me the moniker Mr. Wrestling, which then I got to get my teeth around a little something.
Yeah.
But like I remember I did a dark match one time, and Jim Ross came up to me and goes, "Yeah, you're a great wrestler. You look great, but you don't have any facials. You're just wrestling. You're not over exaggerating anything." So then that's when I turned it all the way up to 11 and just overdid everything. And that's what you have to do. You have to be larger than life. You have to be bigger, more animated. And
Yeah.
once you start doing that, I mean, Hogan's even talked about it. When he first time he looks out at the crowd and comes up, he goes, "Okay, I need to be doing this more than doing this."
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. That's what it is. It's about being larger than life. And that's why I think those characters were so great in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, because they were larger than life. But about scripting. So in WCW, were they scripting the wrestlers back then? Because you mentioned obviously in WWE you were scripted. Were they doing that in WCW in 98 when you were there?
You mean like the matches?
For promos for characters.
I don't know because I wasn't that in.
Yeah.
Yes, everybody. Well, Steiner might be a guy that went out there and just kind of went off the cuff, but most everybody else had something to say.
Yeah.
And it was written out, and they knew the direction they were going. But I think it was a little looser than WWE, because I think WWE would, and it shows in their production. They were always a little bit better in everything, just top class. And I think Vince was, micromanaging everything, trying to, make it right, and it was.
Yeah. Now you were definitely part of that resurgence, I would say. The Attitude Era was one thing, but they weren't able to capture the young kids. And once you came in, Hogan came back, all of that magic started happening again. And we had that more family-friendly product again with the engaging characters. I mean, obviously, didn't you guys take the tag belts from La Resistance, you and William Regal? And
Yeah.
again, great characters, both teams there. You guys had a great little run there. So now let's jump into the WWE run now. Okay, so here we go. It's your debut night. So what's going through your head now? Now you're big time. Now it's happened. 2004, I believe it was April, correct?
Yep.
2004. So recall that day of events. What happened from morning till TV time?
First, I want to apologize because I think they're doing some construction upstairs. If you hear some hammering,
Okay.
I'm going to tell everybody that I'm expanding my beachfront condo with some renovations, but it's just the people upstairs. So I showed up to Raw the night before. I was in Houston at the Houston whatever the arena that used to be basketball. And I remember I showed up the night before. I don't know if I had a bad cold or the flu, but I felt horrible. So I remember the hotel was so nice. Like I called down, they brought me up some NyQuil, and I drank a bunch of NyQuil, and I slept as much as I could and got up the next day and went over. I still had a little medicine head, but I remember walking into the arena there, and the basketball team, the Houston Rockets, must be practicing because there's just Bentley after Bentley after Bentley after Bentley parked. I'm like, oh wow. And I'd never really been a part of the whole production of being on WWE Live on Raw, and then they started handing me the papers, and you're going to do this. I didn't have a whole lot to do because again the story was kind of Bischoff and Regal telling the story, and then Eugene just coming in to be a little bit of comedy. Yeah. And we filmed a handful of things here and there, and I mean again all this stuff was like so surreal. It's like I was concentrating and I knew what I had to do and I had memories of it, but the actual feeling, I know I had to be nervous. I know I had to be, but I don't remember that. I only recall the good things, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's the most important things right there, you know. Um, but it was something. But the way you portrayed that Rain Man character was unbelievable because you really you did it the entire way to the ring, in the ring. You were doing it on the mic. Before we got on, I watched the segment you did with Triple H when he's saying that you're part of Evolution now and you're his best friend and you were so in the moment. You could have been
Mm-hmm.
an actor in Hollywood. You were so there. It was so convincing. So what was that like as well? I mean, obviously you got thrust into Evolution. You were with, well, obviously you mentioned Randy and Batista. You were very familiar with those guys, but now you're with Ric Flair and Triple H. So what was that?
So it's like when you're talking about the Eugene character. I don't know if you've seen the Jim Carrey Netflix where he talks about being Andy Kaufman. And he
Yes.
says, it's just something that kind of came out of him. And then after the movie wrapped, I think they wanted to do the REM video. And he's like, I can't do it. I don't have it. That's how I feel about Eugene. At that time, I was in it and it was coming out of me and it was magical and the fans were a part of it. But now I can do the comedy and I have a good time, but it's a little watered down. It's a little less.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Eugene just skyrocketed and got so over. I don't think anybody's ever gotten over that quickly. I mean, I think my fifth episode of Raw was when I was in the ring with The Rock.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the fans started showing up with signs, and the fans were loving Eugene. Then all of a sudden, all the top guys want to work with me,
Yeah.
and I was just lucky enough that Hunter did, because he was the top guy. And then when I got thrust into that, I mean, it was very easy because when I used to wrestle Rip Rogers, that's the same way that Hunter wrestled. The
Okay.
same pace. I'm following him. I'm listening to him. I could do everything he tells me to do. Very similar to Rip. So I was very comfortable with that. And just Flair liked Eugene too. Flair wanted to do a bit where he got Eugene laid. Like they see Eugene in the bed and they pan back and there's the girls on the side. And then I wanted to do the Wayne's World 2 bit where I put the pipe in my mouth and then blow it and it's the bubbles, like
Oh
the
yeah.
kids'
Yeah.
bubbles.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think they didn't want to get Eugene laid, so that never happened. I just got to play with action figures in the limo.
Yeah, they kept you PG. But that was also good though, because I mean the impact you had on the kids. So obviously at that time social media was less, everything was not as advanced as what it is today. What was it like outside of the ring? Like the influence you had on kids. Were you able to do things like make a wish? Were you able to perhaps inspire some young kids? Any memorable instances that happened there? Because I'm sure that would be extremely rewarding when you were doing that.
I did. I saw a Make-A-Wish child, maybe two, but I don't know that I was ever requested. Cena was always requested, of course. He's the big draw. But I think they would put a couple guys in first just to say hi and whatnot. But what I would remember, like when I first started on the road, it was Regal and Tajiri and myself in a car. And we'd pull up to the shows, and I usually drove. So I'd come in, not swerving hard, not going fast, but just swerving and pulling the parking lot. And I jump out. I go, all the fans would be behind the fence, like waiting for the show. I just got my learner's permit. And then Regal would get out, like having the heart attack, and Tajiri would get out making faces. So
Yeah.
we were always on. I
Yeah.
remember we were doing a media day one time, and the person that was with us from the office, we're walking in the building, and Regal goes, Eugene, what have I told you about coming to a door and a lady and want me to open the door? So there was a plant. It wasn't a flower, it was a plant. I uprooted it. I opened the door and then I handed her the plant.
Yeah.
And I did stuff like that just to see if I could crack Regal. And he's like trying not to laugh behind her.
Yeah.
And I mean, we had a lot of good times. But when Eugene first started on TV, people asked me, oh, was that character ever, people say anything bad about it, or why are you doing this, or you're making fun of people? There were some media outlets that I felt said, what is WWE doing now? What are they trying to do now? What's this character? Because it was about two or 3 weeks before I had my first match. But once Eugene had his first match, then everybody realized it was an underdog story about, a boy achieving his dreams.
Yeah.
And since then, I've gotten so much more positive affirmation from the character, from people. My younger brother had special needs, and he saw you on TV and he knew he could do anything because you did it.
Yeah.
I've heard that over and over, and that's like humbling and like touching. It makes me cry.
Yeah.
I was in Gatlinburg, I think 2 years ago, autograph signing I call him a kid. He's probably in his early 20s, comes up, sign the picture, take the picture with him, and then he hands me his phone, and it's a text to me from his mother. This is Rich. He was always the weird kid in school, high functioning autism. didn't have a dad. Mom was working 2 jobs and going to school, trying to raise him and his younger sisters, and he had no male role model in his life. And then Eugene came on TV, and he realized that you could be the odd guy out, but still achieve your dreams. And like the kids now, like he's got a good job, he's married, and like we're friends on Facebook. But I tried to read that. And I just started crying. So I had him send it to me, right? Maybe a year later, it's been recent. Bischoff, I think on his 83 Weeks podcast, said that he was ashamed to be in the Eugene angle.
Hmm.
But then he called me right afterwards and said, "Hey, will you come on?" I think it was his Patreon podcast, the second one. "Will you come on and we can discuss it?" Cool, So I got on there and I sent him that email. I said, "We're going to talk about it, but you got to read that because I can't." He started reading it. He started crying. And I think he kind of realized, Eugene was an inspiration. Eugene was a good thing.
Yeah.
People try to say, "Oh, how could you do that?" But I mean, I in my heart, I know Eugene was loved and it was a good thing.
Yeah.
The name Eugene came from a guy, Eugene Palermo, who lived in Pittsburgh. He had Down syndrome.
Mhm.
And I think his dad used to repair or make boots for the guys back in the 80s. And they would bring Eugene and he would run around in the back and stuff like that. But once he met me, he was so excited because there's never been a wrestler that had his name.
Yeah.
And he had the T-shirt and we took the pictures together and he and I became friends. He passed away maybe a year ago.
No, that's sad, but yeah, I think that's one of the lasting impressions that your character has. And I've had so many conversations now with some of the guys. I spoke with Rico the other week.
Great
Um,
dude.
yeah, he's wonderful. We had a great time. But you guys have this huge reach. You can have such an impact on the kids, and it's important. Obviously, I grew up in the late 90s. Obviously, I was a teenager then. So I watched a lot of these guys. And, Hogan, we took that to heart, train, say your prayers, and take your
Yep.
vitamins. So what you guys were saying was kind of like gospel. So I'm glad that you got, I think with your legacy, your character, it's like fine wine, It's just the more time goes by, the greater it becomes because you did make a huge impression. What you did with that character was done tastefully. It wasn't
Yes.
in a negative light, and you gave these kids this wonderful, warm. I guess that would be a word to describe it. Warm character, but you were the tactician in the ring. You really knew how to put a match together. So you were tough as well. Um, Speaking of that, you played the role of Doink as well a few times, which must have been interesting because obviously the original Matt Bourne. I mean, I saw something the other day that would have been he had the potential as the bad Doink, the heel Doink, to be something massive. I'm surprised they never did more with him. But what was that like stepping in the shoes of Doink?
Well, first, I'd like to say that I think Doink the Clown should be in the WWE Hall of Fame. He should definitely be inducted. And
Yeah,
I think that everybody that played Doink the Clown should also be inducted under that banner.
yeah, yep,
No, but
absolutely.
it was super cool because it was I believe it was Vengeance 2002, and it was JBL's Barroom Brawl.
Oh
And they
yeah,
said, "We're going to bring you in as an extra." I don't remember if they told me beforehand or if they told me the day of, you know, paint up as Doink the Clown, put the outfit on. Brooklyn Brawler had the outfit, so he handed it to me. So when Doink came out, I think everybody thought it was Brooklyn Brawler because he had played it for a long time. Then the Brooklyn Brawler came out, and everybody was like,
yeah.
minds are blown. But it was awesome to play a character that was instantly over. And I think that's why Doink should be in the Hall of Fame. Is he's always recognizable. The fans have always loved Doink, and it's some people look back and laugh at the character, but I think that was a great WWE character because that's what they are. It's characters.
Yeah, it was a great. I mean, like I said, the first version of him in 92, 93. I remember that incident when he came out Crush and he said, "Oh, I got a bad arm. I got a bad arm." And then he whacked him with the arm. And then WrestleMania 9, obviously. Now we're starting to go back in time now. Our fans coming out of me now. Yeah, it was an exciting time. And I think I agree with you. I think Doink, there's several others that I think should also be in the Hall of Fame. But I definitely think, at some point in the future, you will be there too. Like I said, so you're running WWE as Eugene. It began in 2004. You were there till approximately what, 2007, 8, somewhere around there, 4 years?
I got released in 2007, but then I came back. I got rehired in 2009, but that didn't last too long. Then I got released again in 2009. And then I got hired as a coach in Performance Center in 2013 to 2015. So I think I had maybe like 12 years under employment by WWE or under contract. So I mean, that's a good long run. Most guys don't get that long.
No, no, you had a very good run. What was your favorite? What was your favorite run in WWE? Favorite years?
Well, I mean, definitely the initial Eugene launch and takeoff. I mean, I was in the ring with The Rock. I was at WrestleMania with Hulk Hogan. I pinned Vince McMahon, won the tag team titles. So, I mean, that was unbelievable. You know, the one thing I wish I could have done was I wish that Eugene and Regal could have had some kind of resolution. Like, I assumed it was going to be Regal turn on Eugene, and then I would have loved to have an angle with Regal, long angle, and we could have had such great matches. But I got injured, and he got sent to SmackDown, and it just kind of that was the end of it.
Yeah. Now you did turn heel at one point, correct?
They wanted me to turn heel, and I don't know if it's my inability as a performer to portray a heel Eugene, or maybe I really didn't want to, or maybe the fans just didn't want it because every time Eugene came out, they would smile and they would laugh, and then all of a sudden I'm being mean, and they're like, he's not funny.
Yeah.
But also they had me turn on Hacksaw Jim Duggan, which I love Hacksaw, but if they would have had me turn on Shawn Michaels, I would have got some heat.
Yeah.
Hacksaw was loved, but it was kind of like they don't know what's going on because Eugene's crazy anyway. Maybe he's just going nuts, you know.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know that maybe the right I don't know. I don't know if it was me or maybe the fans or just the investment with the creative. I don't know what it was, but I wish it would have been more. I wish I could have come to my head somehow. After thinking about it for a while, I felt like a lot of people said, well, did they ever think about taking you out of the character and going, it was all a trick? And Vince said, well, I don't want to do that because if there's ever a gimmick later, much like Festus, people might believe, oh, he's going to come out of it and he's just playing. But I thought about, what if a guy has multiple personality disorder? Yeah. What if Eugene is is a regular dude, but part of his mind is broken and he's like he was when he was a kid? Because that's how I tried to emote. Is that the word, emote?
Yeah.
Eugene was like, how did I feel about wrestling as a kid? Or how do I see kids react to wrestling? They get happy, or they get nervous, whatever, they get scared. And I just tried to do that, but maybe I could have branched out and then been like a real heel saying, that's Eugene, but this is another guy in there. But then you could play on it. There could be a woman personality. You know what I mean? There could be a referee personality. There could be a Vince impersonator personality.
Yeah.
I mean, and I thought about this much later. I'm like, damn, that'd have been kind of interesting to try to pursue that, but didn't happen.
Yeah.
Or at least it hasn't happened yet.
That's what I was going to say. You're in a world filled with wrestling organizations now. So, never say never. All right. You're still, I mean, what were you now? You're still in your 40s right now, Nick? Yeah.
I'm in my prime at 48.
In your prime, brother. So I mean, come on. What Sting just retired? He's what, 64?
I saw that. I'm like, I got another 20 years, 15 years. All right.
Yeah, he still got some time. What were some of the biggest obstacles that you felt you had to overcome during your WWE time?
Well, man, I guess just initially getting on the main roster. Because again, maybe it was me not thinking big enough that I could make it and I could be a star and I could be on top. And I just kind of, limited my thoughts and just getting over that. And then when I started, I got injured. I tore my patella tendon in, I think, January of 2005. I had the surgery. And then after that, like patella tendon surgery, they told me you're supposed to have 9 months of therapy before you're cleared. And I came back in 6 months and I wrestled Kurt Angle, which led into the SummerSlam match with Kurt Angle, but I wasn't ready to come back. I couldn't run. I couldn't move. I don't know why the doctor, released me to wrestle. And that's when I started relying a lot on the pain pills. And I ended up, getting a little rehab vacation. And it was hard to overcome that afterwards.
Yeah.
But
so the pain was pretty intense.
Yeah, and this was before the big opiate education that we have now. This was still back when all the pharmacies were just writing, not the pharmacies, the doctors, whoever the reps were just writing pain pills. Oh, they're taking too much. No, this is new breakout pain. They need to give them more, and they give them stronger stuff, and that's just what the reality was. And then I got caught, not got caught, but I was in England and I'd taken something maybe to sleep, a little bit of pain pills, maybe had a little alcohol, which you shouldn't do. And I had my room service tray and I go to set it outside my room and the door shuts on me. I didn't have my key. I'm in my boxers. Shit. So I run down to the lobby. I'll just sneak down to the lobby. And the minute I got in the lobby, I passed out cold on my face. And all the fans and all the wrestlers were in the bar. Hunter's in the bar, Flair's in the bar. I mean, and they had to put me on a luggage cart to get me to an ambulance. And everybody was scared. And I woke up in the hospital. I think the thing that kills most of that has killed in previous years most of the wrestlers were the somas, and that's what after Eddie died, everybody just kind of swore off the somas. Not that he died of them, but it was a problem. From I think a lot of the guys that pass out in their sleep because it suppresses your breathing.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was the thing. But you would pass out and you'd wake up 2 hours later and you'd feel fine. So
Yeah.
I wake up in the ER and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
But then I got suspended. I got sent to my 9-week vacation. But
What year was that?
probably needed it. So what?
What year was that, Nick?
2005.
2005. Well, thank God for that because, like I said, I'd never heard of somas until the interview I did with Buff, because he talked about that too.
Yeah.
And I can see how it happens. I mean, obviously, you're talking to somebody. I have gotten in the ring before. I've taken some bumps. I've worked with Jesse Hernandez out in EWF.
I know him. Great guy. Great guy.
Jesse and I have been friends for about 5-6 years. So, I've tried it and it hurts. I like I said, I always wanted to let the audience know that once you hit those ropes and once you're hitting that mat, that hurts. You've got to get used to it. So yeah, I could see.
Well, the thing about the whole thing about the somas is all the doctors say they're non-narcotic, just a muscle relaxer. And like if you eat a bunch of food and then take them, sometimes they don't knock you out. But for some reason, if you take them on an empty stomach and then we would eat something with carbs, pizza, cheeseburger, and then you would lose muscle control. And you could tell because guys would start shaking like this. And there have been times when, I've had to help guys out of restaurants because, they can't walk or they're falling in their plate. And just, it's the oddest thing because you one day you might take 2 and be fine. The next day you take 2 and you fall out. It's like very unpredictable. And then when you mix them with the pain pills or alcohol, it just multiplies everything and just skyrockets the possibility for a disaster. So yeah, definitely a good thing. Hopefully everybody gets off those.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. And speaking about, obviously things like that, but your training, I was thinking about you physically. So you were pretty well put together. You're a pretty solid guy, pretty well put together. So what was your training like during the height of Eugene in terms of going to the gym? Like what would be a typical day for Eugene at the height of your travel? How did you budget your time?
So again, Regal and Tajiri and I would be driving, and Regal would generally sleep in because he's notoriously had sleeping problems. So he would like sleep in until he'd check out, and then we'd go to the building. He would work out at the building. But Tajiri and I would get up in the morning and we'd go eat breakfast. We'd go to the gym, we would, or go to the gym and then eat lunch afterwards or whatever. And then we go to the show. And generally we would drive after to the next hotel. I would book the hotels for all of us. And then when they got there, they would cover their own, and just day after day after that. So here's a good story. So Tajiri and I go to the gym. We leave the gym. He goes, let's go McDonald's. So, okay, when's McDonald's? Next day we go to the gym. He goes, let's go McDonald's. I said, man, I can't eat McDonald's twice. Can we go to Burger King? He goes, I can't say Ooper. I say Big Mac. I can't say Ooper. So about 8 months go by. Regal goes to SmackDown. Cena comes to Raw. So then it's Cena and Tajiri and myself, and we all go out to, I think, an Applebee's. Electricity went out because there was a storm. So they could serve us drinks, but the microwave didn't work, so they couldn't cook us any food. Tajiri's sitting there for about 2 hours, and then all of a sudden he goes, expletive deleted. I'm so hungry I could eat a Whopper. Ooper, sorry, Ooper. Because a lot of at least the Japanese wrestlers, most of them could speak English, but they would a lot of times not let you know they could speak English, just to kind of put something in their favor. So I knew he could speak English right away because he would talk on his cell when he talked to somebody in America, he'd talk on a cell phone like that, so nobody could see him talking English.
Yeah, that's funny, man. That's funny. So you guys really, I'd say in terms of travel, you spent a lot of time with Tajiri then.
Yeah.
Even after Regal left. So are you still friends with Tajiri? Do you still stay in contact? Okay.
Yeah, I saw him about 2 years ago. I wrestled in France and he was there. And then like he did a tour of Europe and had a particular promoter and he sent me the guy's name. So I talked to him off and on. Hopefully I'll see him again. But then you're talking about training when Tajiri eventually asked for his release and went back to Japan, and Cena and I would ride together. Not always, because sometimes he'd have to do media tours and stuff like that. But then I started working out a lot with him. I'd worked out with him before when we were in OVW, but I mean, he's a machine. He's intense. So it was really good for me to, try to keep up with him. And he knew all the tricks. I mean, he'd been a bodybuilder in California. He was Mr. California all natural, I do believe.
Yeah, back in because he went through UPW. That was another school I went to briefly with Rick Bassman.
Yep,
So,
I know Rick.
Yeah, yeah. We went. I was there when Chris Masters was training with
Yep.
Rick Bassman. So, yeah, no, tough schedules and stuff like that. It's incredible how you guys were able to keep up with that vigorous travel. Most guys struggle to make it to the gym and they just work a normal office job, but you guys were getting beaten, not much sleep, not being able to eat the clean meals all the time like you wanted, but you were still in tremendous shape. I mean, but I
Well,
presume the ring has to do with part
well,
of that.
well, well, first, I think at least for me, a lot of it was fueled by chemistry. You know what I mean? Like you take, we take you used to be able to get the ephedrins, and they would kind of give you a little perk up, and you'll take the pain pills to dull the pain. But the food was generally pretty clean. We go to like an Outback and get a steak or a Lone Star or something. But driving at night was when might get off the diet. But I would watch Cena eat 3-4 double cheeseburgers from McDonald's and like still be ripped. Like
Yeah.
he's just a genetic freak.
Yeah, that's some people are, they are able to do that. Others, they have one or two burgers, they jiggle the next day.
That's me. That's me.
It is what it is. But we all have talents, so it doesn't, if someone has that, they still have something over here. Who is your favorite? Who is your friend? Who was your you say friend outside of the business during your time in WWE? Who was your best friend in the business?
Like in wrestling or outside?
During that time when you were on the road traveling with WWE, who was your number one guy? Who was your friend?
Well, like when I started traveling with Regal, he was definitely a mentor and a friend. And then when I was with Cena, he was a friend. But then I was also good friends with Lance Cade and Trevor Murdoch and Conway, Sylvan. And then when Carlito and Masters got called up, I was friends with those guys. I mean, I was friends with almost everybody. And actually, it was Jonathan Coachman, the coach, once tweeted, someone asked him who's the nicest guy in the locker room, and he said it was me. Who's the guy that everybody likes? And they said it was me. So I was honored.
Yeah.
But when you get on that train and you're with those guys nonstop, you kind of lose touch with family and friends. And, we might be on the road for 20, 25 days in a row overseas. And we had email, we could call, but it wasn't the same. You just you're barreling down the highway. And then when you get released, all your friends disappear. And now you're like, well, what do I do now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I know it must be because obviously you guys are running at such a speed. It's not like you're just, cruising on a treadmill here. You're running. So for that all of a sudden to stop, but that didn't stop you because then you went and you formed your own wrestling promotion. Is that correct? What was that 2015?
Yeah, 2015. I got released in 2007. I didn't know what I was going to do, but then the phone started ringing off the hook for every indie company around the world that wanted me. And I worked almost as much on the indies that I did with WWE, but it was a lot less pressure.
Mm.
There was no stress because I was just having fun.
Yeah.
And then from 2013, 2015, I was a coach at the Performance Center. And when I got released there, my wife was from Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Okay.
She wanted to move back home with her family. And I said, well, there's probably some independent wrestling there. And she goes, I don't think there is. I'm like, there's got to be. We go up there. There's never been independent wrestling in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So I felt like we were the ones that brought wrestling to the wrestling community that liked wrestling.
Yeah.
The nearest wrestling community was in Omaha. A guy named Jason Strife, who's passed away, but really good guy. He ran a company there. And I remember I first moved to Sioux Falls and I went down and I wrestled for him in Omaha and I saw his guys and I picked a handful of them to come wrestle on my first show. On my first show, I got 2 students sign up. And so then I trained those guys for 2 months. And at this time, I just had shoulder surgery, this one. And I couldn't do anything. So from the first 4 shows that I promoted and all the training, I couldn't even get in the ring. So I'm training these guys, these 2 guys. And do you remember the WWE Desire videos with the Creed song?
Yes, yes, I do.
I ripped that off. And I had a video guy, use the song and put the guys that I was training, and I had them talking about, oh my God, this is gonna be my first match, dream come true. Showed them training in the ring, in the gym, and I played that before they went out. And the minute they walked out, they were stars, and they were over. Yeah. And then from that, I got 6 students. So then I had 8, and it just kept progressively building. I don't know how many altogether. I probably maybe in what I had 7 years. I sold it in 2021. I might have trained 150 to 200 guys.
A lot, yeah.
But the thing about Sioux Falls is, or South Dakota, is not a large population. There's 180,000 people in Sioux Falls, which is the biggest city in South Dakota. So looking back, if I would have went somewhere like LA or Houston or Phoenix or somewhere with a bigger population, I might have had bigger crowds and more students. But I don't know that I could say I brought wrestling to a community and to a bunch of fans that wanted it.
Well, bringing us to today, after you've done all of this, obviously today you've got a vastly different wrestling landscape now, and there's so much that you can do. Obviously, you've started your own podcast, your own YouTube channel. So how can viewers find you? Can you let them know?
I got my Twitter, which I've got I think 40 some odd thousand followers still follow me on Twitter, and that's at Eugene Dinsmore, Dinsmore. I got a Instagram, but I feel like when Instagram came out, I was a little bit older, and there's like I don't know, I've got it, Nick Dinsmore, but I don't use it that often. I had my original YouTube channel, which has a lot of my matches and interviews, and that's the Nick Dinsmore YouTube channel. But the new project, like you said, Eugene behind the scenes. I've got a good buddy named Von Lilas that he wants to go. We want to go in depth on the same stuff we're talking about. What happened in the car rides? What happened backstage? What happened when everybody went out that night? And just what are the stories that the people didn't get to see?
Yeah.
So I'm starting to bring those out, and hopefully that YouTube channel will take off. So if everybody subscribes to the Nick Dinsmore YouTube channel and Eugene behind the scenes, and we're gonna keep putting out good content.
Yeah, we're going to put the link in the description of this video as
Awesome.
well.
Thank you.
I've watched some of the videos and they are very interesting. You get into in depth about individual subjects. Obviously, here today we're covering a broad series of subjects, your career. But yeah, definitely viewers out there, go and check out Nick's YouTube channel. It's very, very interesting. So
I think we've only been up about 5 weeks, and our first video has 200,000 views.
Yep, I did.
And I was like, wow.
Yep.
People still want to hear about Eugene, so I'm excited.
Yeah, you've still got that ability. And one of the other things I was thinking, because you have this character, obviously you're a lovable character because you're personally, you're a great guy. And obviously that's recognized. Now, Nick Dinsmore could go and have you ever thought about becoming like a Bobby Heenan or someone like this in AEW or NWA or TNA Impact Wrestling? You have so many options where you could become someone's mouthpiece now or a commentator.
Well, my lawyer told me that I can neither confirm nor deny that I'm in contract negotiations with either WWE, AEW, or NWA. So let's leave it at that.
All right.
No, I'd like to be a commentator. I think that'd be cool. I mean, I always felt like Jerry Lawler had the best job. He was on Monday night. Everybody saw his face every Monday night, and then he went and did indie shows on the weekends and raked in the money. I mean, he didn't take no bumps in WWE, but he would go on the weekends, and I would enjoy that. So, yeah. Tony Khan, if you're listening out there, Triple H, if you're listening, I mean, I could try to be a commentator. Eugene could depart wisdom on everybody.
Yeah, and I think it would work extremely well. Obviously coming back, you've had this break from the industry, on the TV, as it were. And now you come back in, and obviously we're looking back now. It's that 20-year cycle. I heard that on another podcast yesterday. I think it was the podcast, an interview with Lex Luger. I think it was Busted Open Radio yesterday, and they were saying, yeah, it's a 20-year cycle, and the industry it's picked up. But you're getting now, obviously, The Rock has come back to WWE, which has obviously lit a big fire back on pro wrestling. Tony Khan, he's just revamped Dynamite. Everything seems to be changing there. And then you've got TNA that's come back just this year, Nick? It's this year they came back?
I believe so. I mean, I think they were still around in a certain form, but I think the moniker TNA. Yeah. And I was recently actually at an NWA TV taping. Billy Corgan was there and all the stars, and I got to see a lot of people. I was just trying to, it was in Tampa, so I was just trying to get my face shown a little bit. So you never know. It might be Nick Dinsmore going after the NWA World Heavyweight title at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And you mentioned Tampa there, Nick. Do you stay in contact with Hulk? Do you speak to Hulk out there in Florida?
So his beat shop and the Hogan's Hangout are about 12 miles from where I am. I haven't contacted him down here. I didn't know him that well, but I know him and he knows me, and I'm planning on going over. I think he has karaoke on Monday night, so I'm trying to perfect my karaoke songs before I go in there, so I can win on the first night. But I saw him. He had Bushwhacker Luke in there one time. He had Brian Knobs. Of course, Jimmy Hart comes in, and it looks like a party there at the Hogan's Hangout. Everybody doing karaoke and having a good time. So I'm definitely going to get down there, but I want to have my karaoke. I don't know what song I'm going to pick. I've been trying to sing a couple, so I got to be good at it. I don't think I have a good singing voice, but I think I can be funny. If I can't be good, I can be funny.
There you go. There you go. And you can definitely be funny, my man. But like I said, I'll give you that again. Entertainment wise, I think you were one of the best.
Thank you.
During that early 2000s, whenever you were on TV, you really did capture a generation because essentially, yeah, 12 years you captured a decade of the youth, and I think that you did a terrific job doing it.
And even like I still wrestle indie shows now, and the same thing. Like the kids don't necessarily remember Eugene. They might have seen me on YouTube or on the Peacock or whatever. But when Eugene goes out there, I got the crowd. I mean, they're right there in it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that is. That's just the light bulb or the it factor that not everybody has. That you can't really teach. You just what did Enzo used to say, and you can't teach that.
Yep, you can't teach that. Absolutely not. So right now, today, Nick. So today, what are your interests? I mean, obviously, you're still interested in pro wrestling, but what are you dedicating your time to today? You still helping train the youth? Tell us a little bit about your day-to-day activities now.
Mainly, I'm working on my suntan down on the beach because it's a really nice day here today. But there's a local training school called Fight the World Wrestling. I've done a couple shows for them, and I've done a couple of their training sessions. So I'm doing a little assistant coaching there. I'm doing the Eugene behind the scenes. I'm wrestling on the independent circuit. I'm going to England next month to wrestle for 5 days. Before I left Sioux Falls in December, and I packed up my computer and all my hard drives. And at that point, I was writing stories, intending to eventually have a book. Like
Okay.
I wouldn't say I have it written. I don't know if I have it half written, but I would watch TV and I would go, okay, I remember what happened, and I would kind of write a story about it, and I've got it on the hard drive. Once I get a new computer and get everything fleshed out, I'm going to pursue that, and hopefully I can get some sort of a book done, just to do it, just
That
to be
would,
a published author.
yeah, that would be great. I tell you what, there are a few things that are rewarding as that. Obviously, I'm a writer. I write for various magazines, newspapers, and things like that. I've written books. I wrote screenplays in LA. So it's yes.
Well, what I really need is an editor.
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
Because I've got like one thing I told everybody: take pictures, take as many pictures as you can. And when I first started, I think the cell phone pictures were kind of not very good, and I had to use the disposable Kodak, and I got a lot of those. But when the iPhone came out, then you just got 10 billion pictures on your phone. But I took a lot of pictures with a lot of people, so I
Yeah.
want to include that in the book and tell the stories about what happened, how I met him, what was going on. So I've got a lot of stuff to do, but I write it, and then I need someone to help me edit it and all that good stuff and bind it together and whatever happens after that.
Well, I'll tell you what, Eugene, off camera, you and I will talk. I'll give you some information, show you what I've got, because I think yeah, your story would be great. Again, I'm all for family entertainment. I love anything. Like I said, one of the reasons that I wanted to get into the business, just quickly, was again the impact it could have on the kids. I think you guys have the kids in your palm of your hands, and those that have dealt with that wisely and have maintained integrity and morals and values, you guys were able to influence kids in a positive way. So your character is one of those shining lights as far as I'm concerned.
And I hear that a lot now. Like I'll go to an indie show and there'll be some younger wrestler. Oh my God, I watched you when I was growing up. I remember you did this. You remember when you did this, that episode? And they want to get the pictures. And I mean, it makes me feel good. And that I affected somebody. I affected a lot of people. And it's humbling, and it's I don't know. Just I don't know what to say about it. It's almost speechless is what it makes me.
Yeah. Now you mentioned also quickly, I was going to ask you because of your injury, your shoulder and things like that, but you are still wrestling. Does it ever give you any issues, or are you completely through everything now?
Well,
Is it?
this shoulder's been repaired, so it's okay. This what's in there? What's it called? The labrum or the uh, rotator cuff? One of those is torn in my left. I got I don't know if you can see, I got two torn biceps. That's torn there. That's torn there. My lower back is goes out every now and then, and my right knee's bad, but still putting on the spandex, still traveling the world.
Yeah. Are you still using the same costume that you were wearing, or have you modified that over the years?
I sold a lot of the stuff I wore on TV, but I have a blue singlet now that I didn't wear on TV that I just had. So I mean, it's I've taken pictures in it, but the stuff I had on TV, and I didn't have like I didn't realize till later that Jeff Hardy was a prime example. He would change his gear every month and a half, every 2 months, and then he would get a new action figure.
Hmm.
Eugene had the same gear, so I only had 2 action figures. I did end up changing to the Superman outfit because I felt like I needed to cover up my belly because I didn't have, so I wanted to have a singlet,
Yeah.
but I should have, looking back now, every couple months change the outfit so you get a new, you get more pictures and you get a new action figure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Now, a guy who used to always change was the Ultimate Warrior. My goodness, do you remember the amount of costumes he had?
Yeah, you
Yeah,
invested a lot in them. I mean, that's what you have to do.
yeah, he definitely invested a lot. Now, I wanted to clarify something because I heard something online or I saw something that the reason WWE, one of the reasons they released you, or at least Vince was upset with you, is because your physique. Was that true, or is that just a?
When I came back in 2009, yeah, they told me we're not selling old fat Eugene. But
Oh,
at the time, I didn't think Eugene was a body guy, and I was covered up. But granted, I was not in the shape I should have been in when I showed up. But like I saw him in May of 2009, and then I don't remember when I wrestled, but then I got released. Like you, the someone in the office said, "Well, why didn't you ask to go down to FCW and train? Why didn't you tell me to go down there?"
yeah.
I mean, I'm working for you. I'm doing what you say. I don't know. It just certain things like that I feel like is almost an excuse for them. But I was not in the shape that I probably should have been in. I was trying to rely on my personality, which didn't carry me through that time. But
Yeah.
what you gonna do, brother?
What you gonna do, brother? I don't know, but obviously now you look healthy. Like I said, you've gone on beyond the ring. Pardon me. That was something that you touched on earlier. Some of the guys once they get off of that marathon run, they don't know what to do. You have proven no. I just keep going, and you've done many other things. You're in the process now of getting your book out and things like that. You're preparing it, training others and youth. So that's very commendable. What do you think it was? Because I asked this question to Buff too. What do you think it is that kept you grounded so that once the TV ended, you didn't go completely off the rails, you didn't get lost, you didn't, lose who you were. What do you think it was inside of you that kept you grounded after this?
The fact that I didn't want to work a real job, and I mean, like I said, I have a degree in communication, so I could have gotten a job somewhere. And looking back now, maybe that would have been the smarter decision right out of TV, trying to get some sort of straight job. And then I could have had a pension or whatever, retirement. But all I really knew was wrestling.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I sought it out. And lucky enough that social media started to develop, and then you get your name out more. And then people could contact me to book me. And it kept going. It kept growing.
Yeah. Do you have merchandise still available, like that shirt you're wearing right now? Do you have that available on your social media and your YouTube? No?
I got some action figures and 8x10s. I do have an eBay account,
Okay.
but nobody really buys it on there. But I've someone a guy Dave Hero. I can't remember what city he lives in. Not Milwaukee, maybe somewhere up in the cold states. Wasn't Milwaukee? I can't remember. But he knew someone at Jack's Pacific that had 3 cases of Eugene action figures still in the box.
Hmm.
So I bought all those, and I think I have 1.5 or 2 cases left. And I take those to indie shows and sell them, or if I give it to somebody as a present. But I do have some Eugene action figures, but I've had T-shirts in the past, but
Yeah.
I always feel like I end up with a big stock of like 3X's and smalls.
Yeah.
Everybody buys the middle ones, and I don't want to tote them around. So I
Yeah.
have 8x10s, but not a whole lot of T-shirts. But maybe this one someone made for me, my
Yeah.
good brother in Memphis.
Yeah.
So
Nice. Just straight to the point. Says it all.
just doing, yeah.
And your character, you mentioned your action figure. I remember your costume in WWE, the original one. Who did you have any influence on that, or was that creative to find that for you?
No, that was all me because when I pitched the Eugene character, I didn't have any idea what I was going to do. So when they're like, okay, you're going to go on the road, I didn't have a costume. Now they would do a big character study and find out, if you're going to be this type of, however they section out different types of characters. But I just, someone had bought me a red jacket at a flea market for $6. And it was like the old jackets, like the guys used to wear in the 80s. And then the trunks, all my trunks have Nick Dinsmore on them. So Rob Conway had a pair of trunks that he would give the seamstress to make a pattern off of. So I wore those. Those were the blue ones.
Yeah.
I had the knee pads and the boots, but I was wearing the jacket. And then I thought, well, Eugene would probably wear it inside out. So I don't know if everybody caught on that it was a red jacket turned inside out and the inside was white. And then Triple H was the one that says, well, put your name on the back so when you turn it around, it looks backwards.
Yeah, yeah.
And the only way you could really tell was that the tag was in the back. But I don't know that people really noticed that. But the first T-shirt I had, it just had the name tag right there, but the shirt was printed inside out, so the tag was on the back.
Oh,
So
I see.
I think I've got one of those still left, but that was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that was cool. Like I said, the image that you had, and obviously what you did with your hair at the time, that it just worked. It was effortless, and you had that look of you look like one of the classics from the 80s and 90s. That's it just came off. So whatever that was, the stroke of luck that happened to create your look, it was perfect and it worked extremely well.
A lot of the older guys would tell me, like we were talking about Matt Bourne, told me that I resemble Matt Bourne in my
Yeah,
physique, but also and I look at him like I think he does kind of we do kind of look alike,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know. So it was just I think because some people would say, was it Superstar Billy Graham? Maybe no. Superstar kept telling me I look like Kevin Sullivan, which I don't think so. But it might
No,
have been Hacksaw. Was like, yeah, you look kind of like Matt Bourne. You kind of walk like him.
yeah, yeah. Which made sense for Doink. Like I
Yeah,
said,
it does. Yeah.
you were strong. Your muscularity was similar. And you were about what? How tall are you, Nick?
I used to be 5'11", but I think I've shrunk since my back's almost blown out. So I might be 5'10" now.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. So we were about the same height. You would have been the same height. Did you ever meet Matt?
I met him at one of the Juggalo shows at the Gathering. I met him one time. I didn't get a chance to get a picture with him, but he passed away soon after.
Okay. So throughout your wrestling tenure, who was the guy when you met after watching it for all those years? Who was the one you met that you were just like starstruck by? Who was the guy?
Well, meeting Hogan, of course, was phenomenal. Meeting The Rock, meeting Austin, but I was really intimidated by Vince and The Undertaker. I mean, I was like nervous and like not scared, but just like I didn't want to say anything. But you got to say something to be memorable. So but it was a little, you know. Sometimes I would play him up and I would listen and I would watch, but I really wouldn't talk a lot. So, but meeting Vince was like one of the cool things. I wish when I had my knee surgery, I was doing therapy in Birmingham, and Vince, that's when he blew out both of his quads on that Royal Rumble.
Oh,
Remember,
yeah. Yeah.
sliding in the ring. So he had surgery a couple weeks after me in Birmingham, and I knew where the hospital was, so I just went and asked where his room was and went up to his room. I walked in, and he was the only one there. He hadn't shaved for a couple of days, so I saw him with his 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock shadow, and I could tell immediately he was kind of nervous, And I said, I knew he had somebody there to run errands or whatever. I said, I just want to let you know I'm in town. If you need anything, please have somebody call me, and I hope you're doing well. And I left. I should have put a chair next to his bed and talked his ear off until he forced me to leave. Is what I should have done. And
Yeah.
that's probably the biggest regret I have. Is
Mhm.
I should have developed some better relationship. Like the veterans, the older guys have a good relationship with Vince, and some of the younger guys like me are intimidated and afraid to talk to him.
Yeah. Does he come across like that when you were speaking with him? Does he come across intimidating, or does he treat you fairly when okay.
Not talking about the recent issues, but when I knew him, no, he was into the product and he was always working.
Yeah.
And like I didn't work with him, like he would tell me stuff, but I think it was when Triple H and Chris Benoit had our Iron Man match on Raw. And at the end, Eugene comes back out and causes Benoit to win. Then I run up on the announcer's desk, and he wanted that last shot of Eugene, wanted a particular facial, and he literally made me make faces at him for 10 minutes until I could get the one that he wanted.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but he was very hands-on, and again, not talking about what's recent, but he was a very good boss and very nice guy. I mean, but he was all about business, and unfortunately, if you don't produce in that business, you're not going to be around long unless you
Right.
find something that you can do right.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I hear that that's a common thread, they've got to, you've got to produce, otherwise unfortunately, but you
So there's
certainly
so there's
you,
one more story, right? I was riding with Cena, and I don't remember where we were, but we get to the hotel, and I went up to bed, and Cena went down to the bar to have a drink, and apparently Vince came down and had multiple drinks, and then Vince decided he was going to try to double leg take down Cena. Vince busts his head open and had to wake the doctor up to give him stitches, and just they drank all night long. I wish I would have been there for that just to see that, but like they talk about Vince in the old days when he would go out with the guys and have fun, and we never really saw that. But again, he had that type, friendly relationship with Cena where they could go act up one another and just have fun.
Yeah.
So I mean, I knew that he did with some guys. I never developed that relationship with him.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it's understandable. Like I said, he sat upon what is it? I mean, how many billions? It's $1 billion empire now.
Yeah,
And it is shocking, isn't it? The volume of fans that they have now. We thought, I mean, it was big, back in the 80s and 90s. I spoke with Ernest Miller. We were talking about the ratings. And he was saying how even when WCW was on its downfall, the ratings were still higher than what it is today.
yeah,
Incredible. It was a huge time for BF wrestling. But now, like I said, with social media, you see the numbers, Nick. I've a billion followers, I think WWE has.
yeah.
Billion.
We're
It's
a worldwide global media phenomenon. And
yeah,
I don't know that the ratings today reflect actually how many people are watching them, because people will watch on demand, or at least when they had the network, they would watch on there sometimes. So I don't know that the actual ratings reflect exactly how many people are watching, because they're making more money now than they ever have.
yeah,
When WWE said they're going to be PG, their advertising dollar tripled.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think I think they were at a point where they were going to get a beer sponsor and be a little more was it with ruthless aggression, or attitude era, but then they switched and went the other way, and that's when the money started flowing in.
yeah,
Because I mean, realistically, it's a variety show that tours and sells merchandise.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Few more quick questions for you, Nick.
Yep.
Favorite pay-per-view prior to becoming a pro wrestler in the business, growing up?
Maybe WrestleMania 4, because it was like a turning point when Macho Man won the title. It was something totally new. But WrestleMania 3, of course, is the mecca of at that time, that was the biggest one ever.
Yeah.
So I like both of those.
Yeah. So WrestleMania 3 and 4. Yeah, that was the tournament at the Trump Plaza,
Yep.
WrestleMania
Yep.
4. Yeah, that was one of the longest ones. That was like a 4-hour event back in 88. So yeah. Favorite city that you wrestled in?
It was always cool to wrestle in New York City, although I didn't want to drive in New York City. I didn't want to drive. But when I went to Japan, I didn't go to Japan with WWE, but my good friend Tajiri brought me over to wrestle for a Japanese company, and that was like this totally different. Australia was phenomenal. Like, if I didn't live in the States, I would consider Australia, because it's very similar, but yet it seems like it's cleaner and safer, you
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
then Germany was cool, because I feel like Germany was like a new modern city. And I feel like maybe in World War II, when they destroyed Germany, then they rebuilt it. And it's like all these beautiful modern buildings and just fans galore. I mean, overseas was awesome, because the fans treated us differently than in the States. Until recently, wrestling was, it's just that wrestling. But
Yeah.
overseas, we were treated as athletes and stars.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
it's gotten that way now in the States. I mean, it's really gotten that way now, with the big are SmackDown still on Fox?
yeah, I believe so. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, with that big Fox promotion, like, my goodness, I mean, that made guys overnight stars right there.
I think they signed some $5 billion deal now with Netflix.
Yeah,
What that's about. Like I said, I keep up with the product a little bit, like you, more so AEW, because for me, it kind of harkens back to WCW, and I like, that it's a little bit more. It's not WWE has become very commercialized, and
yeah,
obviously now you've got other people that have become involved. Vince is out, so I don't know what's to become of it, but they are opening the checkbooks, that's for sure. You're getting new talent. I mean, obviously, some of the guys, I'm sure you've met them on the independent circuit. Nick Aldis,
yeah, absolutely.
tremendous talent and stuff like
Yep.
that. But yeah, it's definitely changed over the years. But I think it's time for Nick to pop back up somewhere. I think it's time for Eugene
My
to.
fingers are crossed. I'm ready. I'm sitting on ready.
And you should come down here. You should come and give Jesse a call. He's doing a big a show out in June. Rico's going to be there. So I'm doing an interview with Chuck Palumbo next week. So I said, hey, Chuck, you should come down. And
Yep.
he's doing the anniversary. I think it's the 30th anniversary for his company,
I
Jesse's.
think I wrestled for Jesse. It might have been 3 years ago now, but I came out there. I did one or two shows for him, but I've known him for a long time, but I've only wrestled for him a handful of times. But yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to see Rico again.
Yeah, yeah, he was really nice. He was fun. He mentioned you, obviously being in OVW. We got on that subject, but yeah, he was a delight, just like yourself. I think you guys were definitely a class of guys that had class, and you came up and you were that old school way. You were you. It was a little tougher, like you said, but a little, you had a little bit more fun during your training. You weren't like these new guys, these pro, they push them, like you said, athletically to the limits. But yet you guys had the time to mold and develop these characters, and you had more real life experience as well. You weren't given everything right at the start. You had to work for it. And I think that
Well,
built character.
because it used to be a lot of it was you would learn the business in the car after the show. There would be some veteran, my role now, you'd be some veteran in the car that would say, I watched your match, you should do this, you should do this, or just general knowledge. And just that's where you sit back and really reflect on the match of the night or just direction forward. And you really got to know it. I feel like the guys now, again, I'm not around all the guys training now, but they're almost overtraining, and I feel like they're on under pressure.
Yeah.
But it's also a high paying prestigious job they're trying to get, so maybe it's warranted.
Yeah. One of the things I found a lot with you guys as well, and I want to let the viewers know, because we never know who's watching this. It could be a non-wrestling fan. But what I found is a lot of you guys, you're very, very humble. There's a lot of please and thank yous, real gentlemen. One of the things that Rico said, you got two ears to listen, one mouth to talk, you
For
know.
a reason.
Yeah, for a reason. I was even inspired by that. He inspired me greatly, and you are inspiring me greatly, and I want everybody to know that, this old stereotype of professional wrestling is not what you guys are. You guys are very intelligent, very creative. I mean, Hollywood would be lucky to get their hands on some of you guys. Because I think you could write scripts, star in them, direct them, produce, you know what I mean? It's a
Yeah.
very, like I said, wrestling is an incredible sport. And I think, are having this 20-year cycle, and guys like yourself that had such a great impact on the youth, now being able to have these additional little spotlights on you via social media is only going to help, like I said, help people. Like the whole purpose of this show. I want to be able to inspire people with your stories, everything that you've accomplished. So tell us, Nick, what would your advice be to anybody? Here's the wisdom coming out of Nick now. Not particularly for wrestling, but to accomplish goals in life, to stay grounded. What would your advice be to the youth?
Get a mentor. If you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room. You know what I mean? Stay away from drugs as much as you can. Don't go out and party, and stay focused. One thing that I feel like I should have done more in OVW was maybe invest myself in asking Cornette how to do booking. Learn a little bit more about that, as opposed to just what am I doing and trying to do the best at that. I could have done it, but maybe I was only absorbing so much so fastly back then. But just try to learn from somebody credible, as many seminars or coaches as you can get. And again, ears open, mouth shut, shake your hand, introduce yourself, and just altruism. Good things to other people, good things will happen to you.
And God bless. Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much for that, Nick. So have you got anything upcoming? Final thing, have you got anything upcoming where fans can go and see you? Anything you want to promote or talk about?
March 29th, I'm in Cocoa Beach, Florida at a big wrestling show, Atomic Wrestling. Like I said, April 11th to the 15th, I will be in England. I think I'm doing a ribbon cutting ceremony coming up in Niagara Falls, Canada. But Eugene is still taking bookings. So anybody look me up on social media, bring Eugene out.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been a sheer pleasure with us here today on Victoire. So Nick, I'm going to speak with you once we stop recording, but I'm going to say adios to our viewers out there. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to Nick Eugene Dinsmore, a great, stellar WWE performer who gave us a lot of his time, a lot of his effort and energy. And thank you, Eugene, for what you did. Thank you for inspiring a generation and for all the hard work you've done behind the scenes to bring up superstars of the future.
You're so kind. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Until next time, everybody, we'll see you again on Victoire. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Victoire. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. If you would like to get in contact with us, please use the email address in the description of the video below. And until next time, Victor what you must victor in your life, Victoire.